Hello, my name is Paul Yoder. It is a pleasure to share this time with you. I look forward to getting into a couple of reflections and thinking about my story and your theme of belonging. I teach at Eastern Mennonite University nearby. I work with teachers, both college students who want to become teachers and also with current teachers, folks who are in the classroom and who are working at their learning and getting better at what they're doing. As I've been reflecting on your theme, I have come to a couple important ideas that I am happy to share with you. One of them comes out of the Bible. Psalm 139 is a passage that has been very important to me and to my family because when I was growing up, we tried to memorize it. I would say we did memorize it, although I don't know if I still could recite it. So I think I was probably about 8 or 9 maybe, and my siblings and my parents and I were working at committing these verses to memory. So I want to start my reflections by sharing just a few verses here. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. So an important question is, what's the connection here? What are we working with? And for me, I chose these verses as an anchor for my reflections because I believe that God made me. And I also believe that God made every other person, that every human is made in God's image. As we see here in Psalm 139, I believe that each person was knit together in their mother's womb. So I'm reminded of what Jesus said about loving our neighbors. And it is important for me to start the conversation by clearly stating that I believe God made my neighbor. Regardless of how similar or different we may be, when I lose sight of that, oh, I'm in trouble. And so that's the anchor or the foundation for me. So like I said, I remember these verses from when I was a child. And I've also been doing a little bit of reflection about when I was a little bit older then, in middle school and then in high school. And so when I think about my middle school years, I actually don't remember very much. And most of what I do remember was somewhat negative. I attended a public school for middle school, and most of the social interaction was bullying or maybe sort of childish at best. In particular, I have a very specific memory of the boys using the word gay to hurt each other. Of course, it really wasn't about sexual identity or sexual orientation. It was more about how do I show that I'm cool and that I don't really care about this other person's feelings. I remember in the cafeteria needing to sort of look for where I might be able to sit, not really feeling like I was plugged in. And then I'm very thankful that my memories of starting high school at Eastern Mennonite School are different, really the stark contrast. And so I included a couple photos here of some time with friends, people who I still love to be around, even though I don't see them very much. I also, as I've been reflecting, recognize that these pictures highlight the fact that I grew up in what we might think of as a bubble, that most of my friends were also white, also Swiss German Mennonite background. Many of them had parents who had either gone to school together themselves or had similar jobs. Most of us lived in similar neighborhoods. And so that was something that I was reflecting on in terms of my own story and what this very important topic of belonging can help us to dig into, to think about in an important way. So I want to say very clearly that I'm excited that Eastern Mennonite School is directly talking about racial equity. I think that's so important, and I think that's amazing. It brings to mind for me this idea of a journey, of a race, perhaps. Not a sprint, of course, but a long initiative to get to the place, to get to the community that we want to be. So in my own experience, in my own journey, I've recognized that I need to read, I need to talk, and especially listen to people around me. For me, that has included listening to my students and thinking about what in my class is working, but also what do I need to do better? What voices are not being heard? And when are my students feeling like they're not being heard? And so that journey is definitely one that is about growth. I also have another cute little image here. I should be honest, I just Googled this. This is not one of my kids, although I do have a 4-year-old, so he likes to do this too. But this idea of jumping in the puddles also comes to mind for me. I recognize that I am going to make mistakes. And that's something that I've done a little bit of reading and writing about recently. And I wanted to share just a few sentences from something that a conference proposal and paper that I was working on here recently. I said, I recognize that attempting to articulate the role of racial discrimination in my own research and teaching will be messy. It will require not only that I admit mistakes, because I will make them, but also requiring that I identify what needs to change. So I went on to say, my goal with this paper I'm writing is an acknowledgement that I can and must do better. I said, I'm also recognizing that who I am, my own position or positionality, as we might call it sometimes, is going to influence what I do and how I teach. And so I'm committed to critical self-reflection. Those are just a few of the words that I wrote, but I wanted to share just as an example, but also partly to push myself to think about how can I promote belonging? Well, part of it is to demonstrate, is to be honest about the fact that it will be messy. It will require being vulnerable and saying, I don't know everything. I need to read more. I need to watch that film. I need to listen to my neighbor. And so that's what's going to bring us full circle here, as I want to come back to our Psalm 139 passage in closing. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. I want to just leave you with words of encouragement as you, as a community, as you as students, as you as teachers, faculty, and staff continue to dig in to conversations and actions on racial equity, on promoting belonging at a beautiful, wonderful school like Eastern Mennonite School. I encourage you to take the long view. Even when the journey is going to be tough, it's about reaching that beloved community, about making that better community. And so those times and sacrifices, those moments of vulnerability are going to be worth it because of that long-term goal. It's a journey that I continue to be on, and I applaud you. I'm thankful that you are also embracing, so that we embracing the journey, excuse me, so that together we can more accurately, more beautifully reflect our understanding that God has created each of us.